everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the By Word Show. I'm so glad you're here today. Y'all, we're going to have fun today. We have got an amazing guest, Kristin Dickerson. I can't wait for you to hear from her. I feel like we should just dive right in. Like,
Let's go.
let's just do this. Kristin, welcome to the By Word Show. Would you just quickly kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Of course. And first of all, I'm so excited to be with you. I'm excited to share your energy and like your enthusiasm for this fantastic podcast and like so many episodes you've done, which
I love
is such a big deal. So good job to you, Miss Hannah.
Thank you.
My day job, I guess is what we'll start with, which might have been how we got connected, is I get to host a television show called Texas Today. It airs on NBC5 in North Texas, so all across Dallas and Fort Worth and every amazing community in between. And we basically get to highlight all the best things. It started with all the best things in Texas, but we feature all the best things all over the place. And I'm originally from New Mexico. And in high school, I made a lot of really fun yet questionable choices. So my mom thought it would be best for me to go to school out of state, which took me to Oklahoma. And I rode horses for the Oklahoma State equestrian team and got my life together, earned a scholarship, won a national championship, and became the team's spokesperson, which is how I got into television. It got me an internship in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I worked for 12 years, met my husband on a blind date, and then got to a point in life where I was ready to grow and I needed a shift. So at every shift, there is a lot of divine intervention, but it brought me to Texas. And at first I was working on the news side of NBC5, where I was a special projects reporter and weekend anchor, and then heard a divine call in the middle of a newscast after 3 years that said, "You're doing this wrong. It's time to go." So my husband and I left our jobs. We went on a pilgrimage to some of the holiest places in the world for 98 days. We started by walking the Camino de Santiago across Spain, then spent time in Israel living with a woman there, and then spent 6 weeks in India. And while we were actually camping in Israel, I got a text message. My phone was working in the north of Israel. Got a text message from my former general manager here at NBC5 saying, "Hey, we're creating a show that matches the things that you were missing and some of my reasons for leaving. Like I wanted to just focus on positivity and things that bring people together, joy and love and all those good things." And he said, "Hey, we're creating this. Would you be interested in coming back?" And so whenever our pilgrimage wrapped up, I officially applied for the job. We aired one episode and then the pandemic hit. And so I was sent home, and during a month and a half, 2 months at home, I edited our video that we recorded while walking across Spain, which became a movie, became a book, which includes my testimony called My Journey Back to God. And yeah. And now it's just living. So that's kind of the life in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, seriously, what a wild ride. I can't even imagine, because you had been in that, you'd been in your career for what, like 10 plus years at that point,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, in the middle of your workday, you're like, nope, this isn't
What?
right. Like, what in the world? What do you even do with that? That's crazy.
And I should preface that I didn't necessarily grow up with a strong faith. Like we went to church on Easter when we'd visit my grandmother, and like sometimes I would pray like laying in bed, but in a real sweet, but not like in an educated formal way. And so my faith kind of really came to me in my 20s. And I was at the time working in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and everything was good. I met my husband. We had a beautiful life and a house and had a great job, and it just felt like something was missing. And so I started asking the question, like, is this all there is to life? Like, is this it? I'm just going to keep doing this? Like, what?
Right.
Yeah. And then, and that led to meditation, a trip to India where I finally experienced God. So, and that was 2013 in our India trip, and this was 2019 in the middle of the newscast. So I think I still feel relatively new to my faith, but yeah, it was in the second block of news. And so that's basically like you have the first section of news, which is usually all the bad things that happen in the day. And then we get to the second part, and it's normally like happy things, community events, and then you toss to weather, and like then you go to sports. But on this day, it was different. And that second block of news was terrorism and weather that took people's lives overseas. And it was just a very clear, like, I am doing this wrong. And I realized that
Mm,
I had a platform to share the best of humanity. But on that day specifically, I was sharing the worst. And if I continued to do that, like a part of me would darken. And it's like, oh, this is serious. And
yeah.
that was January 2019. And at the time, a lot of things in life were messy. Um, my husband and I had struggled before that with our marriage. We had a family member come and live with us for 1 month, but 18 months later, he was still there. So
Oh
that caused a
man.
lot of friction. None of us were happy on all planes. And then so we resolved that. We sold our house and simplified our life. And then we got pregnant, but then that resulted in a miscarriage. My grandmother passed away. Like everything was just really raw. So it was like, okay, this divine call in the middle of a newscast was a beautiful opportunity to like, all right, it is officially time to pivot. Like, let's choose us, choose our relationship with God. Let's do something. And because we
Yeah.
needed to be rescued.
Yeah. So what was that like coming home, telling your husband, "Hey, I heard this today
Yeah.
and something's got to give."
Yes. We were already kind of looking. Like we had
Okay.
resolved the extra roommate situation. And so we were in marriage counseling with my friend and mentor, Yvonne Lewis, who used to be a news anchor in Tulsa and is now a trauma therapist. And
Wow.
so we were already looking for something. And at first we thought, you know what, we're just going to like go on the road. We're storytellers by trade. We're going to take camera gear and we're just going to like live in an RV. So we're like, all right, we're going to live in an RV. And then it just kind of dissolved. Like the plan, it just didn't work. Like we thought we had the money and then we didn't. And it was just like, okay, this is not what we're going to do. But we
Mm,
were getting signs of the word Rome would always like pop up. Like we went on a trip for an awards banquet in New York and Rome, 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 like sat on the plane next to a woman who came from Rome. Rome was the name of all the little soaps in the hotel. Like over and over, we kept seeing Rome. So that's why we thought, okay, we're just supposed to be mobile.
mm,
And so hearing the message in the newscast, it was like, oh, like we're being told to document the best of humanity. It's like
mm.
that's what Rome means. We're supposed to go and we're supposed to be storytellers and share the best. And we're like, okay, well, where's the easiest place, the most obvious place to do that? It's like, oh, sacred places, like the holiest places. And what, not
Mm.
necessarily focusing on one religion, what brings everyone together, no matter what like dogma they believe in. So then it was really nice clarity. It's like, okay, now we know what to do. Like now we know how to plan this trip.
Yes. Well, that's incredible because I feel like you guys were in this time of your life where, everything had been falling apart. You've been seeking
Yeah.
this clarity. All of a sudden, you've got this crazy sign to go,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys actually go and do the
Yeah.
thing. Like, you went on a huge journey. Like, I can't even imagine just
Oh,
saying, "Hey, we're just going to do this."
so
How
scary.
that time was, yeah, scary. Totally leaving
Yeah.
everything, leaving your
Yeah.
career because your husband left his career as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And the biggest
gosh.
thing I was attached to at the time was a paycheck. Like it was
Mm,
so scary not knowing like what was on the other side. I didn't know at the time that this job that I currently have was going to be created uh like while I was gone. So it's like, okay, but we kept getting signs like over and over. Spirit, I'm so grateful for Spirit because it made it so clear that it's like this is right. Just keep going forward. And my prayer was always like, I don't need to know the end goal. Just show me that first step. Like, what is this next step? And one example was that I knew that we were being called to document like the best of humanity. And the camera gear that I had at the time shot in 1080 and I needed to upgrade to 4K. And so for non-camera people, the difference is basically the quality of the video and what size of screen like it could be shown on. And I
mm.
didn't know the end goal, but I didn't want to be cheap when it came to God. So I was like, all right, I think I need to upgrade our camera gear before we go on this epic trip. So I priced it out and it was going to be $7,000. I'm like, oh, that's a
Mm.
lot of money. Like I could live for months on $7,000 in another country.
Right.
And so, but I knew, again, I knew I didn't want to be cheap. I was like, all right, let's just go for it out on faith, put it on the credit card. And so we spent it and got the camera gear. And over the following months, like random jobs started popping up, and we didn't think about it, even though my husband and I hadn't really been hired for freelance jobs. So we made like a video for a veterans group, and I hosted a horse related TV show as a friend, or as a favor for a friend who was actually my first internship boss, and didn't think anything of it. So right before we leave for our pilgrimage, we were in New Mexico with my family, and we go to a local bank to officially like start our production company between my husband and I, and to deposit our checks from this freelance work. And
Mm.
so my husband is writing out the bank deposit slip, and I'm like, man, how much did we spend on that? Like on the camera gear, because it'd been months since I bought it. So I pull up my credit card statement and I look at the bank deposit slip, and I look back at mine, and the difference between the random freelance work that I did not go after that came to me and the amount that we paid for the camera gear was $1.91.
What in the
Like it was
world?
$50. And then I like asking questions for a living. So I was like, why $1.91? Like, all right, God, like if you could do it at $1.91, why isn't it zero? And then like I just Googled scripture, like 91191, and Jeremiah, it was Psalm 91 came up, and it was, he will wrap you in his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge, which
Mm.
I interpreted as, if I keep just listening to myself and tuning into my intuition and focusing on that one step that I'm supposed to do in front of me, like we'll be protected. It'll be fine. But yeah, leaving was scary.
Yeah. So you guys took the leap, you got the
Hmm.
gear, you start making steps forward, and then you take off and go.
Yeah.
What was it like? Because you guys were there for quite a while. So
Hmm.
I don't even know. Just tell us like the whole
Yeah.
experience. What was it
Yeah.
like?
At first it was fun because we were just really trying to find our footing. And at first we're like, well, maybe we'll like record interviews and focus on people as they walk. So I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we'll try to, for the first 3 days, we tried to interview other people and make our content about other people, and just failed over and over because
Mm.
people walk so fast and we don't. So we couldn't keep up with anyone. And so we realized that, okay, we've got to turn the camera on ourselves. Like we've got to share our journey. And it was really neat being able to document everything, because some of the blessings we didn't see in the moment. It took months later when we were documenting or
Mm.
editing the video, like sitting on the couch, being like, oh my gosh, like all these signs happened the same day. And it was like, oh, like it's still, the experience is still blessing us because of the offering to share it with other people. And
Mm.
we have been asked several times, and it used to ruffle my feathers. So I had to really think about, why does this bother me? But when people would ask, like, do you think you missed out on the experience because you were so busy documenting? Like, do you think you missed out on the blessings? And I thought about that probably for months, just because
Mm.
it like, it arose something in me. Like, oh, it's such a good question. And at the time, I couldn't imagine not documenting. It felt like selfish to do something and to not share it with people who were either physically
Mm.
or financially, like, or just life, like unable to leave everything and go on a
Sure.
hiatus like for 3 months. So I'm really grateful that like we documented. I also realized it was like 2 weeks of walking, and I realized how burned out I had been, because in life, like so many of us just like there's so much going on, and like we work so hard, and we have family to take care of, we have responsibilities,
Mm.
and we just keep going because that's the pace that we're used to living at. And so being
Right.
removed from that fast pace, it felt like I had tinted glass like on my eyeballs, and all of a sudden the tint had been like cleaned off. So it was just like walking through a field, and in an instant I was like, oh, like this is what it feels like to not be burned out and exhausted.
Wow.
Um, so that is something that's really stuck with us, about making sure that we're living at a human pace, and that we're not
Mm.
overcommitting or not taking on too much, and that we're allowing ourselves time to rest, and not just like taking time off to sleep all weekend or to go on a trip, but to rest in the moments in between, of just like, instead of, I'm working on this right now, instead of checking on like my phone or checking email, to just like rest, to just sit here, focus my eyes someplace in the room, and just
Mm,
relax my body. So
absolutely.
the trip was 2000 into 2019, and it's still teaching us and still blessing us.
That's incredible. So, kind of along that same vein, I know you started to touch on some of it, but what was it like for you, not only experiencing these things and meeting people, hearing stories and documenting that, but what was God doing in your heart during that time? Like,
Mm.
how did you encounter God along the journey too?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, and side note, you're a really good interviewer, Hannah, by the way. As someone who
Thank you
interviews
so
people for a
much.
living, you're really good. You're really,
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
gonna, I digress. Okay. I think at first I really thought that God was going to be more like people would have conversations about God and spirit, and we're all walking on this ancient 1,000-year-old pilgrimage, like to the remains of St. James, Apostle of Jesus. We're going to talk about it. And it was so much deeper than that. It was so sweet and so detailed. One of the more significant moments was a dream. And I've had some interesting dreams throughout my life, but and this was one of them. And we were staying the night in a church that was run by nuns, and there's like an albergue, which is basically a hostel, and it's attached to the
Mm,
church right next to it. When the church was built, I think in the like 1300s. And so it's amazing because you walk up the steps to like the bell tower, and you could just imagine like thousands of years of people walking up there, like to pray and to ring the bell. It's just like, so how many prayers have been
mm,
said in this one building? And so we're asleep that night. And right before I woke up in the morning, I had a dream that I was in a car accident, and I could feel my body like being pulled through this gray tunnel, like, and it was just getting faster and faster and faster. And then in the next scene of the dream, I'm in this gray waiting room, kind of like the color of the room that I'm in now. And there were like cheap office chairs around the outside. And I'm like, oh, like I'm dead. Like I died in that car wreck. So I was kind of excited about it because I'm like, oh,
mm.
that means I'm going to meet God here pretty soon. Like, this is good. What's going to happen next? And then I could feel, while I was dreaming, I could feel parts of my body being worked on elsewhere. Like I could feel like my arm get kind of like weak, and like my leg kind of, like I knew something was happening to my body, but it wasn't in the state that I was in. It was happening elsewhere. And then I
Mm,
see my body laying on this, maybe like a hospital bed, but almost like a chair. I have flashbacks of like the Matrix, where it's just like kind of sitting upright. And I see these like, I see God's giant hands like cup. If I was to do, I could do it kind of visually here, like cup my torso, because his hands are like 10, 15 times bigger than my body, and like bring me back to life. And so I wake
mm.
up from that, and I'm just like, whoa, what was that? And then I tell my husband about it. He's like, it sounds like a resurrection. And I feel like that is symbolic of the entire trip. Like it was just like purging all this crap that was weighing me down and that was stressing me out, and just all this gunk. And it just gave me time for my body to purge that physically,
Mm,
emotionally, and spiritually, and then just slowly get rebuilt by pouring back in like the sweetness of people and food and animals of just, and for, I mean, we walked for, it was around 44 days. And so it took that amount of time to just process, like get stuff out, build it back in. And by the end, whoa, I love the video because my husband and I interviewed each other once we made it to Santiago. And like my eyes are just like so calm. It's just, I mean, and I'm cold sober. I mean, I've been sober of alcohol 7 years this year. And so but I was just so like grateful and
mm.
present. And I just wanted to be still and like love everybody. It was really beautiful because it was very opposite of how I started. So it was really worth it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. As somebody who has traveled as well, it just gives you so much perspective when you do
Mm.
like take a step outside of your normal day-to-day hustle routine, and you just like get a glimpse of a different perspective, like all the ways God still shows up in different places, different people all throughout history. It's mind blowing. I just can't even imagine coming home from that. Like, what did you do after this incredible, mind blowing experience? And then
Yeah.
coming back home to America and reintegrating into normal
Yeah.
life? What was that
Yeah.
like?
Great question. And I feel like I should point out if someone's listening and thinking, well, I can't take 6 months or 3 months off my life and like go do all these
Right?
things. I also feel that, and I've been able to tap into like aspects of pilgrimage, like just in daily life, or taking a walk in
Mm,
nature, or even going to a different neighborhood and taking a walk in nature and just like being overly present and maybe picking a day where you could say, all right, today is like my pilgrimage day. I'm going to look for God everywhere. Like show
I
up.
love
I'm
that.
looking for you. Even if you're walking to the grocery store, like, all right, every stranger that encounters me, like, is God speaking through you? So, like, that's a beautiful challenge that I pose to other people and also to myself now that I've spoken it. I'm like, the rest of today, I'm like, pilgrimage day. God, where are you? Show up because
I
he's
love
here.
that.
She is here. So, it was really a nice time. Like, we still didn't have, like, this job was open and I was in the application process, but it wasn't like a for sure thing. And I had given up TV and it was very hard to realize that I'm not in control and realize like, no, I decided like I'm just going to do like faith-based stuff. Like I am like storytelling pilgrim. I'm not going back to like TV, which is funny because it's always very humbling. It's like, no, this is what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing. Like, when I came back, it was really nice. At first, we stayed with Peter's mother, who lives in Florida, and we stayed with her for several weeks. And then we went and stayed with my mom for several weeks. And it was really nice because we were in such a place of like a beautiful mix of exhaustion and gratitude. And so we were finally ready to really be with people and meet them where they are at. One thing I'm currently working on is like whenever I go back to New Mexico and see my family, I feel like, well, I should like make suggestions on how their life could be better or how spiritually they should do something or they should give up certain food. And I'm like, nope, that's not my job. My job is to love them. And so this was really nice because we met both families and just like loved them and just we're just so relaxed and happy. So much so that my dad is a really good sport. He is an auctioneer by trade and has been so for like 30 years in southern New Mexico. And he knew we were out of work and he works very hard. So he
Mm.
said, all right, I'll give you a job if you and Peter want to sit in my auction trailer at the county fairgrounds, which was in the middle of the desert and empty,
Oh
and
my
wait
gosh.
for like farmers in the region and from Mexico to come up and like drop off their like farm equipment that they want to sell. He's like, yeah, sit in that trailer for like a month. I'm like, we've got nothing else to do. Like, sure. And you know what? We had more fun in that auction trailer. And it was just like, I love it because it's so different. Like the job I left is like hair and makeup and all the stuff, right? And then I'm just like living in like long johns and overalls or coveralls in the middle of the desert, like freezing my tail off. And there's one porta potty and it would freeze overnight. It's just that was the
Oh my
only hiccup.
gosh.
But it was so fun. And I realized like it was still so fun because I got to work with my husband. Like I got to be with the person I love all day. And even if it's like trying to figure out like, okay, how do we mark this tractor and what kind of tractor is this without sounding too ignorant? Because the farmers are like, you don't know. I'm like, what kind of tractor? So it was a really sweet place of like approaching life almost with a childlike enthusiasm of
Mm,
just like welcoming everything that came to us with just like joy and excitement and gratitude.
yeah. Oh, I love that so much because it really is so easy to miss when you get in your routine. Day to
Yeah.
day, we start going through the motions, right?
Hmm.
And so I love that something as wild and random as that could spark so much
So great.
joy. And it
So,
is really special that you got to share that with your husband because that's another
mhm.
thing, like going through seasons of figuring out your faith and figuring out the path for your life is complicated enough when it's just you.
Yeah.
So going through it with somebody else can be really tricky, but how was it for
Hmm.
you to in marriage navigating all of that on your
Yeah.
pilgrimage and then also coming back to regular life?
Yes. Oh, I'm so grateful. And I hear from mostly from other women who see Peter and I together and they just say like you're so lucky that you have someone to like do this with. And
Mm,
because since the pilgrimage and we've been on a healing journey as well for the last 2 years and it's so nice to just have someone who believes you. Like, hey, I
mm,
had this dream that God saved my life And he's like, whoa. Instead of like, no, you didn't. Like, you know what I mean? I could not
Right.
imagine how difficult that would be if you didn't have someone to validate, as I feel like, and maybe we all are, just like experimenting with like life. Like, does this work?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this right? What's the sign? What does this mean? To just have
Mhm.
someone to say, what you experienced is legit, and I recognize that.
Mm.
And how can I help support you? We were working on Texas Today for a year and a half. And at the time, Peter and I would take camera gear, and during like the pandemic, a lot of the hotels were empty, but they needed promotion. So they would have us like come to the hotel and shoot a
Mm.
feature about it. And so we were doing that, and we were shooting in Costa Rica. It was just Peter and myself, and we were doing a surfing lesson, and the lesson was successful. Like we surfed, which was a miracle in itself. And at the very end of the lesson, like I fell into the water, and I thought, I could do this every day. Like this is so fun. And what I did not do was put my hands up coming up into the water. And at the exact moment that my head popped up to the water, a wave pulled my surfboard into the ocean, and it brought it right back, and it hit me right in the throat.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
know. And so, yeah. And I fell into the water and was just like, held my throat. And all I could think of was, I need help. I need help. I need help. And so I got to the beach, and my husband was still like out. He was about to catch the next wave. So it took him a while to get to me. And I was just like, okay, just assess like what's going on. And I'm like, okay, I can't swallow. And then by the time he got to me, he's like, what happened? And I realized I can't talk either. I was like,
Mm.
oh no. And then I started coughing up blood. I was like, oh, that's not good at all. That ended up being like 9 days in the hospital in Costa Rica. And also one of the more spiritual experiences of my life,
Mm.
because it was complete surrender. Like I was taken to a hospital, and I was wheeled in, and people were speaking in Spanish, which at the time I did not speak or understand. So I was like, wow, like I can't speak. I can't necessarily listen because I don't know the language. I'm just like, this is a complete moment of surrender. One of my favorite parts of that was how the Camino and like our pilgrimage prepared me to handle that.
Hmm.
And so I was like in a state of crisis. Like spirit is so close, right? Because it's like that's all you've got
Right.
is like that's all you've got. And so we got an initial bill from the hospital about like worst case scenario, you have to have surgery. And it was going to be like the first three numbers were 116. And I was like, okay. And then I remembered that in my checking account, in my savings account that week, I noticed that 116 they were the first three numbers of my checking and my savings. And that had never happened. I was like, 116, interesting. And then the bill came, and it's 116. I was like, oh, look at you. Wait a second. This has happened before. Go to Google,
Mm.
scripture 116. I immediately thought of the moment when the accident happened and I fell into the water, and I couldn't, I can't talk, I can't swallow. I'm just thinking, I need help. And Psalm 116 is like, I love the Lord, for he heard my voice. He heard my cry for mercy. I was like, oh, he's so
Mm.
present. And so that really launched a healing journey of us seeking out holistic ways to heal, because modern medicine couldn't help in a way. Like it wasn't a big enough, like cartilage was broken and there were some perforations, but it wasn't something that surgery could heal. It needed to just heal on its
Mm.
own. And so, yeah, we spent the last 2 years, and I just wrote about all these different ways to find healing. At first, it was just like mentally chanting mantras or ancient scripts to just like, okay, like these are charged with vibrations of thousands of years of holy people, like repeating these words over and over. And so we started with that, and then did something called brain spotting, which my mentor Yvonne does. And it basically taps into the depths of the mind to really connect with what happened. We did sound
Mhm.
healing and something called craniosacral. So having Peter alongside me and being game, like my mom says, he loads up quickly and he loads up easily. It's been so nice to just experiment with, and to have someone by your side to be like, okay, let's try this. What did you experience? What did you experience? So he's been the biggest gift.
Yeah, that's amazing. So your book, because you said you wrote a book about your journey as well. Did
Yeah.
that come after you had come home and were
Thank
reflecting,
you.
or what was that process like?
See, you ask such good questions. It's all
Oh,
about the
thank
follow-up
you.
questions. Good job. Yes, because so I wrote on day 30 of walking across the Camino in Spain. 3 times in the same day, so strangers asked me, "Are you journaling?" And so by the 3rd time, I was like, "All
Mhm.
right, God, I'm listening." Like, I don't have paper. And then so I sat down to meditate and immediately was reminded that I had some paper in my backpack and a pen. I was like, "Okay, I've got everything I need." And so once I started writing, like, it just flowed. And I was reading some chapters last night to remind myself of what happened. And I was like, this is beautiful. And it's beautiful not because I wrote it. Like, it's beautiful because it came through me, but it wasn't my mind picking which word should come next,
Mm.
which is so fun. I think that was the first time I'm realizing it in this moment, that I think I was like in the place of being like a channel to just let spirit like flow through me
Yeah.
and show me all the times that God has been with me and rescuing me through my whole life, when in the moment I probably didn't realize it, but it took like this sacred time in nature and in a holy place to write it all down. And so
Yeah.
we got back and I told my girlfriend, and I told her that I like wrote something that might be helpful. Like, could I send it to her? And she our brains are the opposite. She's very good at like details and organizing and structure. And so she said that she would read it, and she got back to me and said, this can help people. And she volunteered to edit it for me. And we
Mm.
self-published on Amazon. But it took the accident in Costa Rica. It took the surfing accident because I got scared and I didn't want to go forward with publishing, because in the book I write about everything, like all the ups, the downs. Like, it's no longer
Mm.
like the TV persona where everything's fine. It's all of it. Like,
Yeah.
struggles with depression and drinking when I was younger, and drug use because I was drinking so much, and body image issues and surgeries to change body image issues. And so I had to edit it one more time. I just needed to read the book one more time, and then we would publish. And I was like, no, I don't want to. Like, I got scared because I was like, what if people don't like it? What if they don't like
Mm.
me? What if it's not helpful? What if it's not good enough? Which comes up, makes me want to just like hide behind my hair. And so I was like, no. And I had gotten an email, like we get lots of pitch emails from people. And I got a pitch email that was addressed to the wrong person. And it said, like, would you be interested in writing an article about yada yada? And I basically declared to the universe that I'm not a writer. Like, I'm not a writer. And like 2 days later, the accident happened where I could no longer speak. And like, if I don't have a
Mm.
voice, I can't host a TV show. And I had nothing else to do while my voice healed besides read the book and do the
Oh
final
my
edit.
gosh.
So if it wasn't for that nearly tragic accident,
Wow.
while surfing, like, the book that we published about my testimony would have never been published.
That is crazy.
I know. So now I welcome
Crazy.
accidents. I'm like, hey, if I could, it was, yeah, it hurt. But it's like, but at the same time, it was such a blessing. Like, to just now my goal is to listen the first time. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's what I'm working on for the last month. Like, if spirit offers me something, even if it's a job or a task or something I want to resist, if I do not accept it the first time it's offered, if I don't accept it as a gift from God of an opportunity to grow and expand and learn, it's going to be harder the second time it comes around. Yeah, because I'm still going to
Mm.
need to learn whatever lesson that is, or whatever service I need to offer. It's going to be more difficult the second time. I'm like, okay, just
Yeah.
help me see it. Help me say yes. Say yes, please.
Yeah, I relate to that totally. Well, absolutely. And it's so great that you've learned to just be open and available to say yes when those things happen, because
Mm.
I feel like the experience you guys had when you were on your pilgrimage was just totally being available, totally being open to
Mhm.
whatever God was saying. No agenda, nothing,
Mhm.
just available.
Mhm.
And then when you come back to normal, like anybody could experience the same things if we just embrace that same sense of availability
Mhm. Yeah.
every single day. Like, you're
Mhm.
so right. It could be in the grocery store. It could be through an accident, something crazy. You just never know. Like, God can use anyone or anything to
Yeah.
speak and get us, moving on the right path. So
Mhm.
that's incredible. That's just
Yeah.
wild to hear.
And I realized, to help because this is something I've just been dealing with this last month, is that in order for me to be more willing to say yes to what naturally flows to me, I need to make sure I'm not exhausted. Like I need to make sure
Mm,
that I'm like rested, because as soon as I get tired or I've overdone something, I'm like, I can't do anything else. Like I am spent. Like no. And saying no, if it's an offering like from God and Spirit's hand saying, hey, this will help you, or this, even though it's work, you need this lesson. Like I can't be in a place to say no. So now I'm
mm.
just really working on, okay, how am I feeling? Have I overbooked myself? Like, do I have time for myself? Am I sleeping? Being ready to say yes is my current life task.
That's huge. I feel like that changes everything because no
Mm.
matter where you are, what season of life you're in, if you're ready
Hmm.
to say yes, that's the key, I feel like. And so I love what you said about kind of proactively setting yourself up for the
Mm.
yes.
Hmm.
And all of the work that you and Peter have both done with healing to make yourselves prepared for that
Mm.
is amazing. So are there other things that you would say are big takeaways from your
Mm.
pilgrimage that you now implement in your life daily that you
Yeah.
would share with someone who may not be able to go on the pilgrimage
Hmm.
but still could experience the same kinds of breakthrough and healing in their own life?
Yeah. I realized, so we walked for like 44 days, and maybe on day 35, I got to a point where it wasn't like, are we ever going to get there? Like, Mom, are we there yet? I got to a point that was it, when we were like 100 kilometers out. And so like 60-ish miles or so, I realized like, oh, the end is coming. And it completely shifted my mindset, because all of a sudden everything got more fun. I appreciated it more because it was almost over.
Mm,
And that was such a lesson for me, because I'm like, I need to treat life that way. I need to be like, hey, I would like to be here until I'm like 80 or 90, but there's a chance I might not be. So if there is something
right.
I want to do, don't wait until retirement, or don't wait until you have time or you're not tired. Like if there's something that you feel in your heart called to do, or just because it brings you joy or passion, or even if it's difficult, but you have to do it, trust that you have to do it because it's yours. Like that goal, that dream, that intention, that is yours. That is in your fingertips, that is on the print of your soul, that is yours to do. And it
Mm,
doesn't have to, sometimes I make things too big, you know? Like if I would have thought,
yes.
oh, I'm going to leave my job, make a movie and write a book, I'd be like, no way. That's way too big. That's way too
Right.
hard. That's too much pressure. But if it's like, no, just do that one step, like that first step, like that's all you have to do is just take one step. And recently we did a retreat in Costa Rica with a group called The Nature Within. And during that retreat, Spirit gave me a great to-do list that's pretty lengthy. I was like, okay, how am I going to start all this stuff and get all, it's from like relationship work to projects and work projects, and all spirit driven. So I'm like, how am I going to do all this? It's like one step, do one task each day, even if it's like
Mhm.
sending an email or a phone call or researching something. That was probably the biggest thing. And that has lingered with us, is that treating life like it's almost over. So if there's something you feel called to do, like start now, start in this moment before it leaves your mind.
That's great advice. All of this has been so good. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to watch the movie now. I need
Oh,
to order your
yeah.
book and do all the things. So, can you please tell everybody before we go where they can find you, find the movie, find the book, and get connected?
Yeah, thank you so much. The book is called My Journey Back to God, and it's available anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookseller, you would need to ask them to order it. But if you would like to support your local book peoples, ask them to place an order. And just about everything can be found for me, Instagram and Facebook. And it's Kristin Dickerson TV. And we have a YouTube page where we have shared, yeah, everything's on our YouTube page. And our YouTube page is Spirit and Nature Productions. If you go to YouTube, if you can't find anything, send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. Although I am trying to spend less time on those platforms, but I will check it like every few days for sure.
That's perfect. Well, I'll make sure to link everything so everyone can
Oh,
easily
thank
find you and get connected. But Gosh, Kristin, thank you so much for being willing to share your story, not only with us, but just being willing to say yes to God when he called you to go, and now being able to offer so much wisdom and insight to people who are
Mm.
craving the same thing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You did a great job. You're a great interviewer. I'm
Oh
super
my
excited for
gosh.
you. So thank you for having me on your show. It was an honor.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into another episode of the Byword Show. I love having you here, and I'm so thankful for your support. Don't forget to share a screenshot of this episode to let me know you were here. I can't wait to talk again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on Instagram, and remember, I am cheering you on.